Alright guys, 2-5 meetup game is underway here at the South Point. I'm getting a lot of weird looks today. I'm not really sure why. Just me and my buddy here, hanging out, playing some cards. Good. All right, guys. Here's the situation. Not necessarily with the game, but with this costume. It's got a fan inside of it that is battery powered, which keeps it inflated. I'm just going to keep this thing, keep the fan running for as long as the batteries will last. Because if I sit down in this thing without the fan on, then it just deflates. So it looks like pretty odd, even more odd than it does right now. The costume update. All right, going back in. High five.
What is this?
It's a Octoberfest guy carrying me. My beer mug is over there. Looking good today, Brad? Looking good, my man.
You're missing. I don't have my whole costume.
What happened? Handkerchief?
Fell off.
You want me to redo that?
Yeah.
Okay, hang on. Looking good today, Brad?
Oh, thanks. I didn't know you were here.
that handkerchief really is my favorite part of the costume.
Yep.
Nice. Not sure why you're dressed like that. Nobody else is dressed up, but
Everyone's missing out on a $200 first prize for a costume contest winner.
$200.
Yep.
To the best costume. Alright guys, I had to step out of the costume for two reasons. One, it's a little bit hot, even though there's a fan inside of it. And two, the engineering is a little bit lacking. They somehow didn't think of when people had to go use the restroom when they designed that thing. The thing cost $60. It probably cost $5 to make. Anyway, so back in civilian clothing here, but just gonna go run through a few hands here very quickly before getting back into the action. In the first hand, there's a Stradalon. Under the gun player limps. We look down at Ace King offsuit. Go ahead and raise it up to $40. The big blind calls and the straddler puts in a 3-bet to $140. I want to say we're somewhere around $700 or $800 deep, which isn't super deep when there's a Stradalon. But when he makes it $140, that even $100 more, I don't know. I just decided to flat call playing position, and the big blind makes the call as well. So 3 ways to a flop, which comes 9-7-3 rainbow. Big blind checks, the straddler down bets it to $100. I think we can continue for this price. We're gonna be chopping a lot of the time. We could have the best hand a lot of the time. Of course, losing sometimes, but reasonable price to continue in this hand and try and hit an ace or a king. So I call him the big blind folds. Turn's not super ideal. It's the jack of spades, backdoor flush draw. And if he bets again, I'm just gonna have to be done with it. But he decides to check, so I check it back. River puts 4 to a straight on board. He checks it over to me again. I guess we could possibly turn this into a bluff and try to get some smaller pairs to fold, but I guess we have some showdown value as well. So I'm just gonna go ahead and check it down, and my opponent announces ace high, which is good news. Expecting to chop a lot of the time, but even better news, he has ace queen. So we're gonna scoop this one. As mentioned, we do have the best hand there sometimes on the flop, and this is one of those times. In this next hand, I have the straddle on, the under the gun player, and the small blind limp, and we look down at 5-6 suited in the straddle. I'm gonna go ahead and bump this up here. I think we wanna have some suited connector type hands in our range, in our raising range. That will help us with all sorts of board coverage. So I go ahead and make it $60, and both of the limpers call. Again, not super deep, we're even more shallow this time. So as we go 3 ways to a flop, which comes ace, jack, 7 with the 7 of hearts. I would love to c-bet this board because first of all, it should favor our range versus a limp calling range. And also there's that 7 of hearts on board, which will provide for a lot of backdoor opportunities, barreling opportunities. But as I mentioned, we are very shallow here. These guys maybe have want to say like $300 or so in their stacks. So I just decided to check it and hope to get a free card, which we do. Action checks through and we see the 8 of hearts on the turn. So open-ended straight flush draw now. And once the small blind checks it over to me again, I'm gonna put some pressure on here, play for stacks if need be. If they raise over the top of this bet, that's fine. We're just gonna call it off with this equity. Never in too bad of shape, I wouldn't think. But anyway, we put a bet out there and they fold, so it doesn't come to that. It's a good turn card for us, and we take it down with 6 high. In this next hand, I again have the straddle on from under the gun. The first player to act limps. The cutoff makes it 40, and we look down at pocket 10s. Could definitely 3-bet here, but I think it's okay to flat call as well. Don't really want to face a 4-bet and play for stacks, I don't think. Yeah, so whatever, I call. The limper calls as well, so we're going 3 ways to a flop, which comes 9-9-5 with 2 diamonds. We check to the initial raiser, who puts out a bet of $80. Can't do anything other than call here. Player on my left folds. Turn is not a good one. It's the ace of diamonds, completes front door flush, and completes some of his c-betting hands, I guess. Even though I expect him to check some of his ace-high hands. On a paired board, that shouldn't improve too many people too often, so he could have some ace-high hands as well here. So action checks all the way through though, and we're off to see a river card, which is another 9. I decided to check it again. Cutoff player puts out a bet, a very small bet of $75. So I don't think he's gonna have too many bluffs here. I think he... Jamie Kerstetter, look at this.
Hi guys.
We have another costume. I was just telling him,
I'm a chipmunk.
I had to take my costume off briefly, but I'm glad that you replaced
it. Too hot?
Well, they didn't engineer it in a fashion that allowed me to use the restroom. So that's a little annoying. But I'm glad you took my place of wearing a costume. Where was I? So I check it over to my opponent in the cutoff, and he puts out a bet of $75. I don't think he's gonna have too many bluffs in this spot. I think he's just gonna check down a lot of his pairs, and what can we beat at this point? So I go ahead and fold, and my opponent shows us, he flashes us the ace queen. Gets there on the turn, but at least we put in money when we were ahead and $0 when we were behind. There was one more hand where, mostly standard, I think, I called a raise in position with pocket 7s. We go 3 ways to a flop in which we flop ourselves middle set. Favorable flop for the pocket 7s. The initial raiser puts out a bet. We call. It's pretty dry, so I don't think I'm gonna have too many raises in this spot. The other player folds, and we go heads up to a turn of a 10. I think it adds a flush draw. This time he checks, and I put out a bet, and he calls. River's another 10, giving us a full house. He checks, we bet $200 and some, and he thinks for a while before making the call. So we win with the full house, scoop that one in. Yeah, that's all of the information I have to share with you lovely human beings at the moment. Candy is still being distributed via the bomb pots. There's bomb pots happening every dealer change, usually of the double board variety. Oh, there was a bomb pot that I played. I had the 9-4 offsuit, and we flop ourselves bottom 2 pair on the top board and a gut shot straight draw on the second board. There was a bet of $75. I raised it up to like $400, going with it, having a good hand and equity relatively to those boards, and the players ended up folding. So we take that one down. Heading back to the poker now. Guys, quick update. Just a couple of quick hands here. First hand at the new table, walked right into a bomb pot, looking down at King Queen. Flop ourselves top 2 pair on the top board, and flop ourselves a gut shot to a Broadway on the bottom board. Checks over to us. Just gonna go ahead and bet $175 here, and that gets the job done. Drag that bomb pot in. One more fun hand here on this same table. We 3-bet ace king suited out of the small blind versus a cutoff open. He raised to 20, I re-raised to $80, and he makes the call. Flop comes 5-5-3. Backdoor spade flush draw for us. Down betted here, $40, and my opponent calls. The turn is another 5, and I decided to check it, but I'm not sure that's a great check because we should have all the best hands here. Very unlikely that he has a 5, and he can't call or shouldn't usually be able to call versus continued aggression. So I'm not sure I like my check, but action does go check, check, and the river is another 5. So we end up with the nuts here. We can't lose. Just gonna go ahead and put in a small value bet. I'm not really sure what the best play is there. Maybe size up to make it look bluffy or something, but we can never really be bluffing because my opponent can have an ace there a lot of the time as well. So I went with a small bet, trying to get some value from, like, I don't know, king, queen suited or something. Or maybe he misreads the board. I don't know. It doesn't work. He folds. So we don't win any additional money, but we do drag the pot. Okay, moving on. Next table. All right, guys, one more hand, and definitely an interesting one that developed at the meetup game. Moved over to a new table, and shortly after moving over there's a limp from under the gun, and we look down at the best hand ever created. We're looking down at 2 black aces, so I raised it up to $25, pretty standard sizing. And the player on my direct left, he immediately makes it $75. Folds back over to me. Obviously a nice little development here. I'm gonna go ahead and put in a 4-bet. We're about $1,000 effective, and he could be thinking that I'm just trying to isolate the under the gun raiser. Turns out we have the goods here. I could have some 4-bet bluffs in this spot, but not this time, obviously. This time we have the goods. So I'm gonna go ahead and 4-bet it. I think it's $205 to go. My opponent is not done with aggression. He decides to click it back, puts in the min 5-bet. So whatever that is, not sure of the exact math, but I believe it's 330-ish some odd dollars. All right, now we're gonna set the trap. We're gonna go ahead and set the trap here because it shouldn't be too difficult to get the rest of the money in post-flop. We should be able to do that on the flop, assuming it doesn't come down like king, queen, jack, or some terrible flop like that. So I go ahead and flat call, and we do in fact get a good flop. It comes down 7-6-3 rainbow. So all of the overpairs should not be able to get away from this flop. I check it over to him, and he puts out a continuation bet somewhere around $200. That's only gonna leave another $500 or so, or maybe even a little bit less, maybe 4 something, to just go ahead and jam all in, covering him. As mentioned, he's not gonna be able to get away from any of the overpairs, pocket kings, pocket queens, pocket jacks, and he's probably just gonna shut down with all of his bluffs anyway after this street. So we jam it in. All in.
Raise all in. Oh.
And my opponent snap calls. Pretty good news, I just roll it over and he shows us pocket kings. We are in great shape to win a big pot here. The turn brings some life for him in the form of a 5, which puts 4 to a straight on board. And the river is a 4, which does in fact put a straight on the board. So as it turns out, we both have a straight. To the 7, aces versus kings, once again, in back-to-back videos does not work out as good as we might hope and dream it might. We are gonna chop this pot, and if you think about the equities in these past 2 hands, you know, it's one way. If you really wanna torture yourself, it's one way to look at it. So in the previous video, we got in aces versus kings for somewhere around $1,400 in the 5-10 game. We lose that hand. We should win that around 80% of the time, which means we should profit a little over $1,100 in that hand. And in this hand, same situation, with him having $1,000, we should profit about $800. In this hand, that's a little under $2,000 worth of profit that does not materialize. But I don't know if that's the best way of looking at it. There's been all sorts of times where we get in aces versus kings and we win those hands, and we win 100% rather than 80% of the time, or 80% of the money rather. So just got to take the long-term view of these things. It's all good. We end up booking a win in this game, get into it for the initial $1,000 buy-in. We cashed out the game for $2,361. That's a profit of $1,361. Cannot complain. A fun game here. I never got the costume back on. A little bit too much hassle with that thing, but it was fun. Glad some other people showed up in costume. I'm gonna go award Jean-Francois with his $200. He doesn't know this yet, but the man has won himself $200 for dressing up in the King of Hearts costume. Yeah, shout out to a few other people who showed up in costume and everyone who joined us at the meetup game, Halloween style, here at the South Point. Off to the bar, gonna go live stream with Brad Owen. Wrapping up over here at the bar over here at the South Point, just outside the book room.
Here, sweat this.
Go.
Let's sweat this action.
Here you go.
We got 3 aces. We get a 4th ace. I'll buy Brad a shot. Here we go. Just making sure I'm holding all of these. Oh! Brad's getting a shot. Brad's getting a shot. We got 4 aces. Look at that. Live here on YouTube from the South Point in Las Vegas. It's still going.
4 aces. Wow.
Wow.